Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a hidden force that derails more corporate strategies than any market crash. It's the intellectual seduction of pessimism. We're going to explore why bad news just sounds so much smarter, and more importantly, give you a framework to make sure your long-term vision isn't hijacked by short-term fear.
All right, let's just jump right in. Picture this. You're in a strategy meeting. You hear two very different takes on the future of your market. On one hand, someone says the market will grow by 10% next year. Okay. On the other hand, someone leans in and says a massive collapse is coming next month.
Now, be honest with yourself. Which one really grabs your attention? Which one makes you lean forward and start thinking about a plan? It's the warning, right? It feels urgent, serious, smarter. And believe it or not, there's a powerful biological reason for that, a reason that impacts every single decision you make in the boardroom. See, in the high-stakes world of strategy and finance, pessimism is just intellectually seductive. Why? Because it feels like protective advice. The person warning you about all the things that could go wrong sounds like they're looking out for you. Meanwhile, the optimist? They often come across as a naive salesperson, trying to pitch you on some rosy future that just feels, well, a little disconnected from reality. And here's the crucial point. This isn't just about experience or being cynical. This bias isn't something you learned in business school. It is hardwired directly into our DNA. It's a fundamental feature of our biology. Think about it from a survival standpoint. For thousands of years, our brains have been honed for one thing above all else: survival. A missed opportunity might mean you don't eat for a day, but ignoring a threat, that could mean you get eaten. In today's world, that instinct means a 10% chance of a market downturn gets 10 times more attention than a 50% chance of an upside. Our brains were built for the savannah, not for spreadsheets. Okay, so if our biology primes us for fear, what does the hard data of history actually tell us? Because when you step back from that immediate, gut-level reaction and just look at the evidence, a very, very different picture starts to emerge.
I mean, let's be real. History is just a relentless sequence of absolutely terrible events. You've got the Great Depression, 2 world wars, financial meltdowns, global pandemics, and every single time, these events fueled dire predictions that this time it's different. This is the end of growth as we know it.
And yet, just look at the data. Despite these profound shocks, each one feeling like the absolute end of the world at the time, the long-term trajectory of human innovation and the global economy has just relentlessly marched upward. And this right here is the central conflict for every leader. Our short-term instincts are screaming danger, while the long-term data consistently shows resilience.
So the big question is, how do we as leaders reconcile our own biology with the data? How do we build a strategy that respects risk without just giving in to paralyzing pessimism? Well, let's get into a framework that helps you do exactly that. We call it the shield versus the spear.
Now, the solution here isn't blind optimism. It's not about ignoring threats. It's what we call pragmatic optimism. This is a core strategic belief that accepts two things as true at the same time. One, terrible events are absolutely inevitable. But two, so is human ingenuity, recovery, and our capacity for long-term growth. It's really about betting on the recovery, not just surviving the downturn. So let's break down these two mindsets. Seductive pessimism, that's your shield. Its entire focus is on avoiding immediate loss. Its core assumption is that the current threat is permanent. But pragmatic optimism, that's your spear. It acknowledges you need a shield, of course, but it's ultimately a tool for actively pursuing long-term growth through the cycle of disruption and recovery.
And what's really fascinating is how this framework translates directly into the language we use as leaders. Seriously, the words you choose in a meeting can single-handedly shift the entire strategic posture of your company from a defensive shield to an offensive spear.
So, listen to the language of the shield. You hear phrases like deep structural weakness. What does that imply? Permanence. The advice is purely defensive, and that language, it triggers that biological fear response in your team. It encourages everyone to hunker down, cut costs, and just wait for the storm to pass.
Now listen to the spear. It's the exact same market event, but the framing is totally different. Words like volatility and dislocation imply that the situation is temporary. And the call to action isn't to hide, it's to identify long-term entry points. See? This language reframes the exact same crisis as a moment of opportunity for those who have a pragmatic long-term view.
Okay, so how do you actually put this into practice? How do you start arming your team with spears instead of just handing out shields?
Here are 3 concrete, verifiable actions you can take with your leadership team starting as soon as next quarter.
All right, let's get tactical. First, audit your narrative. I mean, really, go look at your internal emails, your meeting minutes. Are you constantly talking about threats, or are you talking about opportunities? That's shield versus spear language right there. Second, present the historical view. Take 15 minutes, that's it, and just walk your team through that long-term data we just looked at. Ground them in the reality of resilience. And finally, number 3, reframe one threat. Pick one current headwind your company is facing and challenge your team. How do we reframe this as a long-term entry point? This isn't just a thought exercise. This is how you start to rewire your team's strategic DNA. So I'll leave you with this one question to take back to your team, because the answer will determine whether you're just surviving the present or if you're actively building the future. Your narrative defines your strategy, so choose it wisely.